Hello guys, it's Zodiac here, and this video is coming actually at a request from one of my guildmates, who recently learned that I've started uploading videos, and I decided to take on requests just for the hell of it, but it's also to help everybody out who's not only in the guild but who may be new or whatever. Now, I'm actually going to be taking a look in this video at gem setups. Now, I'm going to try and be as generic as I can, but obviously as an enchantress, my setup that will be shown is focused towards my character. But let's take a look at it anyway, shall we? Now, there are three main groups with regards to every bit of gear bar your weapon. The weapon is a separate one and we will look at that individually. But your head and your chest piece, and your leg and your talisman piece, and your ring and your artifact piece are essentially in the same group, quote unquote. So with that in mind, it's going to make things a little bit easier to look at. Now, let's look at the actual setup for gems. There's a lot of baseline generic stuff. The first four pieces, all these, can actually be similarly grouped together for all the classes. It's the bottom three, which will change depending on who you play as. Now, for the first group, which is your head and your chest piece, I'm tired. There's a very distinct setup you can look for here, and it's what I'm showing right now. You basically want to have an amethyst for health, a ruby and a citrine for your two main defences, and then an emerald and a sapphire for your crits. You might think you'd be tempted to throw a white crystal in. Don't. For what it adds in terms of your power and what it adds in terms of usefulness, it is not worth it. If you want your mana, focus on star maps and completing each galaxy. It's tough, but it will work. Trust me. Now, moving on to your leg and your talisman pieces. This is where your elemental defense comes into play. Now, I will confess, my gems are not optimized. I've done a lot of combining and all that sort of stuff. So I still have a couple of lower level gems embedded into my gear, some of which are actually useful, believe it or not. But anyways, I've actually put them in the slots and they're relatively optimized. With your elemental defense gems, it doesn't really matter so much so long as you have coverage of all 6 elements. One of your elements is probably only going to get covered once. In my case, I've got ice and holy being covered once. So you probably end up with 1 or 2 elements only being gem powered once for your elemental defense. However, so long as you've got coverage of all 6, there's really no sort of like question of setup you can use there, so feel free on those regards. Now, your ring and your artifact. Here's where you can get some nitty gritty. As an enchantress, there's potentially 4 elements you can use, but once you start upgrading your skills, that drops to 3. If you haven't upgraded Immemorial Wrath and you use it, you will want rubies. But for the most part, across the board as an enchantress, you want an amethyst, a sapphire and a citrine. Those are your big ones. As you see, I actually still have level 3 ones. Like I say, mine aren't fully leveled up yet, but they are optimized. As a sharpshooter, there are 2 primary elements you want to look at, which are thunder and darkness. I think there are others, but I can't remember. Feel free to quote me either in-game or in the comments or anything like that if you know the elements used. Swordmasters. Now I actually have the gems embedded for the Swordmasters in my ring, and there's only 2 that you need, a ruby and a white crystal, because they only use fire and holy. They do not use anything else. And finally, the Blood Hunter. Now the Blood Hunter is a bit of an anomaly, as it can use a multiple range of elements, but there are 3 that it focuses on. There is thunder, fire, and poison. They're the only class that uses the poison attack stat. The only one. So I'll let you know on that now. Moving on, and to the last bit of this video, your weapons. Now, there's been a lot of debate over swapping certain gems for others within your weapon. But I'm going to run a baseline discussion here. For the Sharpshooter, this setup you see for you is, or more or less, what you will want to be looking at. You can swap out a amethyst for a ruby. It will give you a slightly bit more power, and it'll give you a tiny bit more damage, but direct damage does ignore an opponent's defense, so you are at least guaranteed damage. If you add the physical attack to an enchantress, you will get a little damage boost, but it can still be heavily reduced. So something worth thinking about there. Obviously you want your emerald and your sapphire for your crits. Now the white crystal, it's, like I say, it's where there's a bit of debate there, because some people have it on for the reduction, some people don't. Some people actually even swap a white crystal for a ruby so that they've got a little bit extra damage. I personally don't mind a little bit of direct reduction. Having a little bit of defense ignoring reduction is always good. Now when it comes to the other 3 classes, which are physical based, you can pretty much follow the same setup, only instead of having a citrine there, where it's shown, you can have a ruby. Other than that, there is no other real changes. It can still follow the same guidelines. And with that in mind, that is almost covering the setups. There's one last thing before I quit this video that you want to look at, and that's this. Your gem Radiance. This is something you really want to try and get, as it will help you immensely in most of the aspects of the game. Now, I don't know if it will actually show the lower levels because I'm at a high level. No, it doesn't. But basically, what you want to look at is starting to work on your gem Radiance. Each level of Radiance will add a certain percentage of PvP damage and toughness. And once you hit level 5, you will start getting a chance of reducing damage received by so much percentage. At level 5 and level 6 Radiance, it is 30%. At level 7 and level 8, it's half. At level 9 and level 10, I think, yeah, you will offset it, which is a chance of completely nullifying. It even works on level 11 and 12. I think it's just offset. I think offsetting is just actually nullifying. It used to say counteracting at level 12, which meant you actually dealt some of the damage back. But I think it's just a case of nullifying it. And that's all there is to the Radiance. Just work on it and keep leveling your gems up once they're set up. My name has been Zodiac, and I shall see you guys next time.